Hello, welcome back to the Momentum Shift podcast. Today is January 14th, 2021. I'm Nishant, and joining me is Ayush. Today we're going to be talking about the blockbuster James Harden trade that went down today and the NFL coaching situation. James Harden was traded to the Brooklyn Nets, and Houston got back Victor Oladipo, Dante Exum, Karooks, 4 first-round picks and 4 pick swaps. Cleveland, who was the third team in the trade, got Jared Allen and Torian Prince, and Indiana got Karis LeVert in the second round pick. What are your thoughts on this blockbuster trade?
Well, after James Harden's comments yesterday, we all knew it was coming. We just didn't know it was to the Nets or how soon it would be. And I think the Rockets did all right. If the Nets make a mistake like they did last time, where they traded for Kevin Garnett and Paul Pierce, and they turn out to be the worst team in the league, then the Rockets could have won this trade easily because then those first round picks that Brooklyn would have given up wouldn't be um, late in the draft, like 25th, 26th in the first round, but actually they would be like top 10, top 5 lottery picks if these three guys leave or one or two of them leave or something. But otherwise, in the immediate future, I don't see how these picks are too valuable because, um, yeah, because the Nets are going to be a contending team. Same with the Bucks pick. For the foreseeable future, the Bucks will also be a contending team because they've got Giannis under that supermax. And I don't know how Victor Oladipo helps the Rockets too much. Of course, he's a step down from Harden, but I personally would have liked to see Karis LeVert more because Karis LeVert I think has a higher upside because of him being younger and his contract situation. So, those are my thoughts for the Rockets. What are your thoughts for the Rockets?
Me personally, although there were some picks that were kind of bad in terms of just the value of them, uh, two of the pick swaps and one of the first round picks come after 2025, which is really important considering that Harden, Kyrie, and Katie are all already 30, and some of them will be like in their late 30s by the time that happens. So their team wouldn't be as good. So the Rockets could hit on those picks. Um, Also, bringing Victor Oladipo in, they have the opportunity to trade him at the trade deadline or keep him, or just let him walk in free agency if he wanted to as well. And I feel like that's pretty good considering if they don't want to pay him too much, they have the option to, and they could also get more value for him. I think the Rockets kind of put themselves in a situation where the Thunder were in last year or this year, where they're just kind of trying to start trade some of their good players, but also kind of keep a contending um, well, like last year with the Thunder, they kind of just tried to make the playoffs, bring in Chris Paul, even though um, they still got a lot of picks for Paul George and Russell Westbrook. So that was a pretty good deal that way. Um, yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the Rockets. What are your thoughts on?
The
Well,
Nets.
also, what are your thoughts on the Nets situation with bringing in James Harden to form that really good big three?
So I think this team with James Harden now, I know they don't have amazing depth now and all that, but I think even if you were to just look at those three guys, when the playoffs roll around, what you need are stars and a good starting five, because then in the playoffs the games matter more and the best players play more minutes. So a good bench doesn't help you out as much. So a team like the Lakers, which is really deep, even past their two stars, that really won't help them all too much. You don't need too many. You don't need great depth in the playoffs. It's better in the regular season to allow the top guys to rest. But I think the Nets could use their star power, and they've got the highest ceiling in the league if they can hit it. And I think any team should be afraid of them if they're clicking. It's the only question to me is will they click? That's a really big question. We all know about Kyrie Irving. He hasn't been attending the games and he's just not there and he's not injured. So he's not attending the games. He could cause a rift. We all sort of saw this coming. We knew something really other was going to happen. Kevin Durant's looking almost in MVP form, at least by the way he's playing. James Harden has not looked amazing, but then again, he wasn't too motivated. But I think all three guys need to prove themselves. Kyrie won his title as the second option. He's only got one. Durant has got two, but he was the overwhelming favorite. And James Harden doesn't have a title, so they all should be motivated. And the Eastern Conference is set in a way that it's pretty top heavy. So your second and third round matchups will be tough, but your first round matchup won't necessarily be one where you have to sweat it out. like the Western Conference, and they could sort of take it easy there, and that could help them in the playoffs. What about you?
Yeah, one thing I was just thinking about was Harden and Kyrie kind of have that tendency to sometimes skip games, and especially in this season with the threat of the coronavirus. If one of them were to get corona like during the playoffs or right before the playoffs, it kind of impact the Nets in terms of like where they would go. So I think they really need to keep that in check. Uh, the Nets like seem really talented on paper, but other than a starting five, I don't even really see them having that good of a six man because Landry Shamet just isn't really that to me.
They do. They've
And
got like Joe Harris, and they've still got Spencer Dinwiddie.
but Dinwiddie's out for the season with an ACL tear, and Joe
Oh yeah,
Harris is coming in and starting lineup as of now. So and DeAndre Jordan, he's been playing really bad as of recently. He was really just moved out of the rotation, and now he's probably gonna have to start at center. So that's gonna be a small issue. I don't really understand why they traded Jared Allen because maybe it was because of the contract, but I feel like at the same time, he was
does
a
Jared Allen make a lot of money? Because I don't understand why they would give
he
him
he
away.
makes like yeah, he's 22 years old. He's a pretty good shot blocker. Like he doesn't have to have offensive star power because he's next to like those
Yeah,
three
that
scorers.
sort of didn't make any sense to me. Like they didn't get anything back. The Cavs just gave a Bucks pick, I think, to the Rockets. So I don't understand uh, why that was such a why they had to get Jared Allen out of there. And
You know,
you said he's 22, so he might be on his rookie deal. So I don't know why
yeah,
you get rid of
exactly.
Allen.
You know, also now they're talking about the Cavs. I feel like I don't really know what the Cavs are doing as well, bringing in Jarrett Allen because they also have Andre Drummond and JaVale McGee at their center spot. So unless they're gonna make
And they
another
also got
trade,
Kevin Love and Larry Nance,
yeah,
which I
exactly.
think they
They
thought.
have five people that you could play at center in this day and age. Like Kevin Love, it's like the NBA's kind of smaller, and Kevin Love has the ability to play center.
I
Like
mean,
although,
hasn't Kevin Love sort of been like injured or something?
yeah, I'm not really sure.
I think it was really just a take what you can get situation because they gave up a Bucks first round pick, which is going to be like the 28th overall pick or 30th overall pick because of how dominant the Bucks are in the regular season. So giving away the Bucks pick, I just feel they just took it because they could. I don't know. Again, I don't know why the Nets would give this away, but from the Cavs perspective, why not just take another young guy when your team is like just stack all the pieces up. A Bucks first round pick isn't going to be too valuable.
Yeah, from the Pacers perspective, Oladipo's on an expiring deal, and if you're not like committed to paying him, bringing in Karis LeVert, who's an extremely talented scorer, and also a second round pick, it's a pretty good return for Oladipo, and it's really interesting to see
I
where
think
the
it's a really
Rockets
good
go.
return, honestly, because
Yeah,
to me, Karis LeVert is more valuable, and they got a second round pick because to me they're pretty similar players in terms of their production, but Karis LeVert has the advantage that he's younger and he can give you more years. And a side effect of that youth is that he's not due for an extension yet, so they won't have to pay him max level money or like 30 million or something like the Rockets would have to if they wanted to keep Oladipo.
yeah. One thing I'll say though is Oladipo is an All NBA caliber defender, and Karis LeVert isn't that great of a defender. So I don't know how much of an impact that'll make, but I feel like with Karis LeVert being younger, it kind of gives them that time for him to improve, and he's never really been able to prove himself because he's always had people above him. But now being on the Pacers, he's gonna slot in at the starting shooting guard position as Oladipo's gone, and I feel like he'll have a chance to prove himself in the Pacers offense. So that'd be pretty
I don't
interesting.
think I have to disagree with you there. I don't think he's an all NBA type defender. Like I think he's good, but nothing spectacular. And even if you want to make the argument that he is, I don't think he is. You could say he was, but he's been injured for quite a while, and you don't know how those injuries affect a guard's defense because a lot of times guards' defenses rely on athleticism and being able to chase guys around and stuff like that. Because an injury may not hurt a big man as much because they can, still block shots and contest shots at the rim because of their length. But I think we saw this with Clay Thompson. How could his declining athleticism affect his defense? Because he was like an All NBA type defender, but those two injuries could really hamper his ability to defend. Now, I don't think he'll be a bad defender or anything like that, but he won't be where he used to be.
Yeah, but I just been watching some Pacers games recently, and Oladipo's actually been a pretty good player this year, like on both sides of the ball, and that's why I kind of brought up the defensive point because I just see him playing good defense, and also he's averaging 20 points on 45% shooting, which is pretty good. So I
I
also saw
think if
another
you look at the
report, by the way.
Pacers roster, that's one of the most intriguing rosters to me because they've just got a starting five of like 5 solid players. None of them are stars, but then all of them are just really good players. Like, you'd be happy if any of
Bonuses.
those if any of those 5 guys was like your bench guy, like your Lou Williams or Dennis Schroeder, Montrezl Harrell type guy, because I think Brogdon's a really solid player. So is LeVert, so is TJ Warren, so is Sabonis. He was even an all-star, although I wouldn't
Yeah,
really put him
this
in the
year,
same breath
this
as
year Brogdon
other
and
all-stars.
this year
What?
Brogdon and Sabonis, this year Brogdon and Sabonis are likely all stars based on their
No,
production,
Brogdon won't
and
make it most likely.
it depends because I think Harden now takes Brogdon's spot. I
Oh
think
yeah,
in
Harden's
the
in the East
All-Star
now.
game. Yeah, so the East is actually what we kind of saw. So when LeBron went to LeBron's been in the East, the West has gotten stronger and stronger because you don't want to play LeBron. And now that LeBron's in the West, a lot of the players are moving to the East, and it kind of shows how much of an impact he makes on the whole league because he literally like changes the way conferences think. And like think of if you're in the West, like all you're thinking about right now is the Lakers. It's kind of like the Warriors effect from a few years ago. That's what happened to the Clippers last year as well, where they were just so focused on the Lakers. They literally just blew a lead to the Nuggets in 3 straight games and
Yeah,
lost.
that sort of gave me a perfect reminder of what happened to the Steelers, I think in 2017, where they were so focused on beating the Patriots, they completely forgot about their divisional round matchup against the Jaguars, and then the Jaguars beat them. So that was
Yeah, I
sort
think
of interesting.
yeah, that's
Like
actually
the
pretty
whole
good.
the whole season, like only all Mike Tomlin and Ben Roethlisberger and everyone was talking about was like, yeah, we got to go up to New England and beat them. We got to do this. We got to do that. But they didn't even get the opportunity to beat them.
Yeah,
Same thing happened to the
it's gonna
Clippers.
be kind of like how the Chiefs will be with Mahomes in the future years, as long as they keep their roster intact and stuff.
I think
Um,
this could be the point you made could be a very significant legacy move for LeBron James, because the ones who hate him would just say, "Hey, you won in the East. You made it to the finals in the East when it was easy, and then when you went to the West, everyone else was in the East, so it's not that big a deal." But I think eventually people might realize that that's the impact LeBron had, that everyone else stayed away from him in the East, and then now that he's in the West, everyone else is staying away from him there. So while the ones who hate him might be able to say, "Hey, wherever he went, he had no competition," I think eventually people might realize that the reason he had no competition was that because people didn't want to compete with him. They knew they'd lose, sort of.
yeah. Also going back to the Harden trade, by the way, another report I saw 2 hours ago was Oladipo still hoping to be traded to the Heat. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't know who they'd give up, because at this point, someone like Tyler Hero straight up would make a little bit of sense, because I don't know if Victor Oladipo makes a ton of money right now, or if he's still on a relatively small deal. And then, but I think someone like Tyler Hero has too much value, and I just don't get what they'd give up. Maybe like a pick or two in Duncan Robinson or something that I think could help out the Rockets, because the Rockets could become like a mirror image of the Pacers, where they haven't got one series, like one proper star. They've just got a team full of, like, none of the guys are stars, but they're not scrubs in any way. They're just, solid NBA players. So
Yeah.
yeah.
If the Rockets are able to just kind of keep making to the playoffs and making that money for the team and the media and stuff, while also keeping a bunch of picks and improving their team for young players, that'd be a really great way to rebuild instead of just completely blowing up the team, which they also have the option to do, because it puts them in those years that kind of like the Knicks are now, where it's also questionable if they can get to the place they are. It's kind of like what the process is, and
Yeah, but
it's
the
not really
Knicks
that
still
fun
have
to
young
watch.
players. The Rockets don't really have young players. I mean, Christian Wood's like moderately young, but it's not like he's going to get way better now because he's already 25, 26. So he's not like 19 or 20 where he can get a lot better. And then the other guys are pretty old, and John Wall and Cousins and Eric Gordon, all the
No,
other guys.
I'm so the Nets and the Sixers were the two finalists for Harden in the morning, and the Sixers were offering a package of Ben Simmons, Tyrese Maxey, and and a few picks, like a few first round picks. And in my opinion, that was a better offer than the Nets offer because to me,
Are you sure they were offering this? I think that would have been too good to pass up.
Um, that's what the reports were saying at least, and I'm not sure. The Rockets were also asking for Matisse Thybulle, and since the Sixers weren't able to like get that, I guess,
Maybe they're
or I
only
don't know
giving
what it
like
was.
one first round pick and then like two pick swaps or something.
Yeah, maybe
So
because to me, picks like although they're really good, it's kind of hard to hit on a pick sometimes. And if it's also like a 20 to like 30 pick, it's not going to be like as easy as a top 10 or top or a lottery pick because lottery players are a lot more scouted and most lottery players end up becoming solid players, if they're not like all stars. And it's really hard to hit on those like far back type of picks. So and with Ben Simmons and Tyrese Maxey, who's been playing really well this season, and Ben Simmons, who's a pretty good all-around player other than his shooting. If they're able to develop his shooting and build a team around him, I feel like that might have been a better option than the Nets four pick swaps.
yeah, I sort of feel that would be like that young franchise cornerstone they were looking for. I think it would have been really interesting to have him and Christian Wood playing for the future because again, they're both like 24, 25-year-old guys who've got about half a decade left of like elite production and then maybe another 5 years of decent production. So I think that would have been the better move. But then you would have gotten stuck in no man's land. You wouldn't be a serious contender, but then but you're still gonna like make the playoffs or something, but be like the sixth seed, and that wouldn't you wouldn't get better through the draft. And with the 76ers picks and with Joel Embiid being pretty, he still has a few years left of high production. Same with and them also being under contract for a long time. Same with like Tobias Harris and all these other guys. You sort of feel like even the 76ers would be like a borderline playoff team at worst, even if James Harden was to play absolutely terrible. And their draft picks just wouldn't be that valuable, like you said.
Yeah. How do you think the Nets stack up to a team like the Bucks or the Lakers?
So again, I said this earlier, and it was that their ceiling, or when they're clicking, their ceiling is the highest, or when they're clicking and everything is going right, they don't just stack up well to the Bucks, they stack up well to the Lakers and the Clippers, and I think they're the best team in the NBA if everything goes right. Now, again, just being the most talented roster doesn't make you the best team. We saw that last year with the Clippers. That's a prime example, and we can't forget something so recent. And I think they could very easily fail to meet expectations. And the Clippers had their same, chemistry issues. They didn't play well enough and all that. I think James Harden's not in the best shape. Kyrie Irving could get him and Harden could get COVID and potentially risk the health of the whole team. Durant is coming back from injury. Kyrie Irving is injury prone. James Harden's like not in the best condition. So a lot of the same problems that we all saw with the Clippers, I think, are mirroring now in the Nets. So again, like the Clippers, they probably have the highest ceiling, but they have many factors they need to overcome in order to reach that ceiling. What about you?
Yeah, yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think one other report that I saw was Kyrie Irving was a little bit mad about the Nets for hiring Steve Nash without giving him any input, and I think you think there's a point where the Nets like just give up on Kyrie and kind of trade him, or
Yeah, I saw something that said just trade Kyrie Irving for Russell Westbrook. What are your thoughts on that?
um to me, I feel like Kyrie Irving's better off ball than Russell Westbrook and he's a better shooter. Although I feel like Russell Westbrook is better in the locker room for sure. Um, I don't really know what happened in the Rockets locker room last year, but if they left on good terms, I think it could work. At the same time, I feel like Russell Westbrook needs the ball in his hands a lot more than Kyrie does, and I don't really see it working with James Harden and Kevin Durant. I feel like James Harden needs to also kind of prove himself that he's able
I mean,
to.
the locker room thing, I sort of get that, but what about him and Kevin Durant? They didn't have the best relationship after he left Golden State, right? So
Yeah, but I think if you like look at a lot of the tweets nowadays, Kevin Durant always like talks about he doesn't really give hate to Russell Westbrook. He says stop hating him and stuff, and he's out and they like dap each other up like before the games that they played against each other last year. So I think they're in a better state. But at the same time, I don't really understand why you do that. It doesn't really make sense for either team because the Wizards, in my opinion, just need to go into a rebuild and
Yeah, and
bringing
Russell
Kyrie.
Westbrook's like 31 or 32. He's not going to help you out in a rebuild at all. Same with and the Nets. I don't know if they want the inconsistency and the volatility of Kyrie Irving, where he could cause locker room issues and he could be a negative impact on your team beyond what he does on the court. So maybe they trade him because they don't want those negative externalities that come along with Kyrie Irving. And even though he probably would fit worse on the court, he'd be better off the court. And maybe you make that sacrifice.
Yeah, maybe. All right. Do you want to move on to the NFL coaches situation?
Sure. So I think let's
So,
start with the Eagles situation. They recently fired Doug Peterson. So what are your thoughts on that?
um, so I saw reports saying that Doug Peterson was committed to starting Jalen Hurts. I think that was one factor because I think the Eagles organization still has a little bit of trust in Carson Wentz. And in my
No, they don't have
opinion,
trust in Carson Wentz. They've got all the money invested in him. I think that's why they wanted to move on from him because you could easily fire and hire a coach. He wasn't Bill Belichick or anything where he's like one of a kind or a super amazing coach. I mean, he wasn't bad, but he wasn't spectacular either. And you have to be sort of invested in Carson Wentz, and you have to keep hoping he can do well because even though he's playing terrible and the worst quarterback in the league, you sort of too because of the money you've paid him. So like you're sort of invested in him.
yeah. Also, if you watch the Week 17 game against Washington, Doug Peterson kind of threw the ball, and I feel like the Eagles organization kind of wasn't really impressed with that, and might have been part of his firing. I
Yeah, of
think
course. Even
they,
the Eagles players, I think there was like a report that some of them were trying to fight him or something, and they had to be held back.
yeah. If I was the Eagles personally, I would probably with the highest like you picked Jalen Hurts in a first or second round pick. I'm not really sure what the pick
Second
was.
round, second
Yeah,
round.
and his ceiling is pretty high considering he's a mobile quarterback that also has pretty good arm talent. I say you I say you trade Carson Wentz and give him an opportunity somewhere else and try to focus on
No,
Jalen Hurts and
who's going to trade for Carson Wentz? He's the worst quarterback in the league, and he makes so much money. Why would you want to trade for Carson Wentz? That's way easier
because
said than done.
yeah, but I think that there's like he has like a lot of potential and he's really talented. I think his issue was I watched this video on analyzing quarterbacks and it talked about how he had a few injuries last year and it changed his technique and his accuracy has been like kind of bad and that impacted his mentality and
I
along
mean,
he's
we're
also had a
not
lot of
discussing why he's bad. I'm not saying he's not bad. Like the same thing with an injury. I don't blame the person for being injured or something, but at the end of the day, their production is still going to be absolutely nothing because they're injured. So they
yeah
have no
but
net
what I'm
value to
saying
your
is
organization. Whereas I think where Carson Wentz might have a negative impact on your organization because he makes so much money that you can't give to other players and improve your roster through free agency or contract extensions, keeping the players you draft. He also could cause like locker room things. He was saying like, I don't want to be a backup and stuff like that. But quite frankly, no sane person would start him over Jalen Hurts or even the third string guy that they had.
yeah but I think if you bring in a trainer and you kind of like help him work with Carson Wentz. I think he can kind of help like Carson Wentz go back on track. I'm not gonna say he'll be as good as he was last year or in
No,
his
you
MVP
have to.
season.
You have to. No matter what, you have to do that. There's just too much money invested in him. His contract is so bad that no one would take him. Like, fine, fine. Let's imagine this: you're the GM of any team in the league, any team. Why would you trade for Carson Wentz?
I'm not sure unless you're attaching a first round pick to him.
Yeah,
But
but
uh,
then you're hurting your team, and then you're just like, who would you trade? Let's say you're the GM of any team. Would you make the trade for him? And if you would, which team would you be trading on the behalf of?
I'm not really sure. I'm just like I was just saying like if you were the Eagles, that's what you would be trying to do.
You
But
don't want to
I
do that
wasn't
because
really
a lot of the
thinking about
bad
it.
teams want to tank and like the Jaguars, they all want to tank and build through the draft. And he's not young and he doesn't have significant upside. So he's literally untradeable. We talk
Do
about
you
like
think?
how some people have incredibly high trade value. He's got no trade value. He's got negative trade value probably.
Yeah, but do you think? Didn't you like cut? You just cut him and you pay his $60 million that's guaranteed over 4 years. So instead of paying $30 million, you pay $15 million per
Yeah,
year,
you do one of the
and just
two.
cut him.
That's where they made their mistakes. Where they should have let Jalen Hurts play, and they could see how Jalen Hurts is. Because if if you see Jalen Hurts is good, then you cut him immediately, and you take away all of his drama and him being like, I'm not going to be a backup. I'm not going to do this that, and then you also you take the hit up front, and then like sort of you take the pain right now instead of prolonging it and taking it over a longer period of time. So I think that's something you have to do.
But
And
like, but if you cut him, you're paying him $50 million instead of $30 million. If
yeah,
you have him on the bench anyway, I feel like that's actually a good, like a good deal in a sense that you're not
paying
really
$30
like
million
putting him
to a
through. Yeah,
backup
exactly.
who causes locker room issues. Come on, man. That's
Exactly.
you're
So
paying
if
him
if that's
so
the
much.
direction I want,
You're
but I
paying him
can I can
Sean
see him.
Watson type money to sit on the bench and make fun of, or not make fun of, but be a negative impact sitting on the bench. So if you're negative impact and you're Patrick Mahomes and you're negative impact and you're still making $50 million, he's such a good player that you'd be willing to deal with like the toxic environment of that and all the money you're giving him. He's giving you nothing in production. He's so bad that he's not even playing. So he's quite literally giving you nothing. He's taking away money that you could use for resources that could be diverted to other players or resources, and he's hurting your locker room. There's no way. You have to trade him, cut him, or if Jalen Hurts isn't good enough, you sink. You're all, sort of all in with him.
Yeah. So I think you just got to figure it out. It's gonna be a tough situation. To be honest, that Eagles head coach job is kind of enticing, but at the same time, I feel like there's better options out there than the Eagles job.
There've been
And
like
if you're a head
reports that
coach,
one of the reasons he wasn't that he was sort of fired was because of the relationship Carson Wentz has with the owner of the Eagles.
yeah, yeah,
So
for sure, for sure.
yeah, so I don't know if any GM, if any coach wants to go there when they hear the reports that Carson Wentz is sort of uncoachable. He doesn't listen to feedback and he just does things the only way he wants. They also realize that getting rid of Carson Wentz isn't an option without gutting your own roster. So it's sort of like you're stuck with him and he's not going to be good. And there's no chance where he takes where the owner takes your side over Carson Wentz because of their relationship. So I just don't see any scenario why anyone would want to go there.
Yeah, I think you have to take a chance, and unless the Eagles are giving like a bunch of money in comparison to a team like the Jets, I don't really see why you would take the offer
But
because the Jets do.
Even the Jets, why would you pull the trigger on that trade? Because you want to rebuild. He's 28, 29, and he makes a ton of money. There's no reason to trade for him, is
Well,
there?
I'm not saying the Jets would trade for him. I'm saying like the Jets head coaching job is more of a better job than the Eagles even being the Jets because
Of course.
like they have
Like
the number.
if you manage to get rid of Carson Wentz somehow, then yes, I sort of would want to play. I sort of want to coach the Eagles because you got like a promising young quarterback, and there's only one way to go, and that's up. But with him, no way.
All right, do you want to end the episode?
Yeah, sure. So
Uh,
thanks for listening to this episode of the Momentum Shift podcast. Catch us in the next episode, and thanks.